The perception of mountain ranges as permanent, stable refuges is a strategic error. They are more accurately assessed as volatile corridors where environmental pressures are amplified, not absorbed. The Siwalik Hills, a 400-kilometer range flanking the Himalayas, provides the definitive case study. For millions of years, this corridor acted as a primary filter for species migration between continents, but its defining characteristic was not permanence, it was extreme volatility. To quantify this instability, we must disregard simple species lists and instead deploy a more rigorous metric, faunal turnover rate. This measures the velocity at which species appear and disappear in the fossil record, providing a direct proxy for ecological pressure and environmental resilience. When analyzed through this lens, the Siwaliks cease to be a static geographic feature. They become a dynamic, high-turnover system, a natural laboratory for observing how geological upheaval dictates the rise and catastrophic collapse of entire biological communities. This corridor is a record of adaptation, competition, and extinction under extreme duress, challenging the intuitive view of mountains as tranquil sanctuaries. The transformation of the Siwalik Hills from a static environment into a high-turnover ecological corridor began deep underground. During the Middle to Late Miocene, roughly 15 to 8 million years ago, the ongoing Himalayan orogeny accelerated. The Indian Plate's relentless collision with Eurasia pushed the mountain range higher, fundamentally altering atmospheric circulation. This tectonic exhumation disrupted the established Asian monsoon system. Instead of distributing consistent, heavy rainfall across the subcontinent, the newly elevated peaks created a massive rain shadow. The physical geography of the region was rewritten, shifting the climate-forcing mechanisms that dictated local survival. Before this tectonic shift, the Siwalik corridor operated as a highly connected, humid paradise. It featured continuous, closed-canopy forests and extensive floodplains that stretched unbroken across the 400-kilometer expanse. This high connectivity allowed forest-dependent species to move freely, creating a stable, low-turnover ecosystem. However, as the monsoon patterns fractured, that baseline stability collapsed. The continuous humid forests fragmented into a mosaic of dry woodlands, savannas, and expanding grasslands. From a connectivity standpoint, the corridor inverted. Open terrain pathways expanded while closed canopy routes were severed. The landscape transitioned from a uniform, water-dense environment into a highly variable, moisture-stressed gradient. This structural fragmentation meant that the geographic pathways which previously guaranteed survival were suddenly cut off, stranding specialized flora and fauna in shrinking ecological islands. This rapid environmental transition forced an absolute biological reckoning. The shift from humid forest to dry savanna did not just change the scenery, it altered the fundamental metrics of survival. Species that relied on the dense, continuous canopy found their habitats dissolving, leading to widespread local extinctions. Conversely, the expanding grasslands opened new niches for grazers and open-terrain predators. The resulting faunal turnover was severe. The Siwalik corridor became a volatile transition zone where relict forest species briefly overlapped with newly adapted savanna specialists. This forced adaptation under extreme climate pressure set the stage for the highly unusual, hyper-competitive ecosystem that defined the late Miocene. The fragmented Siwalik corridor became a testing ground for megafaunal dominance. The mosaic of grassland and relict forest created overlapping niches, supporting a bizarre and highly competitive assembly of specialists. This was not a balanced ecosystem, but a high-stakes arena where unique adaptations determined survival. Two primary herbivore strategies emerged. The first was based on sheer defensive mass, exemplified by the giant tortoise Megalochilles atlas. Weighing over a ton, it was a low-level browser whose immense shell made it impervious to all but the most extreme predatory force, a walking fortress adapted for a resource-variable environment. The second strategy was mobility and feeding height, perfected by Siwalikhills giganteum. This massive giraffid, built more like a heavy-set moose with large, palmate ossicones, exploited both browsing and grazing opportunities. Its robust build and weaponry suggest intense competition for resources and mates, a clear indicator of a crowded herbivore guild. Predatory pressure in this corridor was uniquely structured. The top carnivore niche was not held by a feline, but by the giant vivarid erectus. Some species reached the size of a wolf or larger, operating as powerful generalist predators capable of taking down a wide range of prey. Their dominance demonstrates an alternative evolutionary pathway for apex predation within this specific environmental context, challenging the typical cat-dominated model seen elsewhere. The presence of such large vivarids indicates a food web rich enough to support multiple, competing carnivore guilds that operated day and night. The most significant force shaping the corridor was the unprecedented concentration of proboscideans. At least 5 distinct genera, including Gomphotherium and Stegolophodon, coexisted here. A single elephant species acts as an ecosystem engineer, a multi-genera cohort acted as a landscape-scale transformation engine. Their combined feeding habits, grazing, browsing, and uprooting trees, would have actively suppressed forest regrowth and accelerated the expansion of grasslands. This immense biomass of mega-herbivores did not just live in the savanna, they were instrumental in creating and maintaining it. This collection of giants, armored tortoises, horned giraffids, massive vivarids, and competing proboscidean engineers defined the Siwalik corridor at its peak. Their coexistence illustrates a system under immense pressure, characterized by niche specialization and intense competition within a rapidly evolving landscape. The stability of the late Miocene corridor was an illusion, sustained only by a temporary climatic and competitive balance. As the environment transitioned into the Pleistocene, continued aridification pushed the system to its breaking point. This stress was compounded by the arrival of 2 new, fundamentally disruptive biological agents that would dismantle the existing order. The established megafauna, already struggling with shrinking resources, now faced pressures for which their evolutionary adaptations were completely unprepared, initiating the corridor's final collapse. The first shock was a complete restructuring of predatory dynamics. The era of the giant vivarid was ended by the arrival of Meganterion, a saber-toothed cat that represented an escalation in lethal efficiency. Unlike the generalist Erectus, Meganterion was a specialized megafauna hunter. Its robust, powerful frame was built for grappling with large prey, while its infamous canines were precision instruments for delivering a swift, fatal bite. This new apex predator was perfectly adapted to neutralize the very herbivores, like the remaining Cibotherium and young proboscideans, that had previously relied on sheer size as their primary defense. The risk calculus for every large animal in the Siwaliks was irrevocably altered. The second, and more profound, disruption was the arrival of Homo erectus. This was not simply another predator, it was a novel ecological force. Armed with sophisticated stone tools, cooperative hunting strategies, and eventually the ability to control fire, Homo erectus introduced a type of pressure the ecosystem had never experienced. Fossil evidence confirms they were highly capable hunters, systematically targeting and butchering megafauna from megalochilies to the largest herbivores. Their impact went beyond predation, as landscape engineers using fire, they competed directly with the proboscidean guilds, accelerating the conversion of woodland to grassland. The incumbent giants were caught in an unwinnable, three-front war against a drying climate, a new apex predator, and an unprecedentedly intelligent, tool-wielding hominin. This combined assault overwhelmed the corridor's resilience, triggering the terminal decline of its unique megafaunal assemblage. The Siwalik Hills corridor offers a stark, unambiguous lesson: geological forces are the primary architects of biological destiny. The rise of its unique megafauna was a direct product of tectonic uplift and shifting monsoons, creating a temporary, specialized ecosystem. However, the subsequent collapse demonstrates the profound fragility of these giants. When faced with the combined, accelerating pressures of climate aridification, a new apex predator, and the novel cognitive threat of Homo erectus, even the most dominant species proved unable to adapt. The corridor's history is a definitive verdict on the limits of resilience against rapid, multi-front environmental disruption.